It's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. And this week, my first question comes from Zacchaeus4, who says, talking about egalitarians who in no way seem egalitarian, what do you think about the term regressive left as used by actual regressives? What I find most amusing about it is how those same people always have to point out that Islam isn't a race, so they can't be racist, and how Islamophobia is a misnomer since people use it to refer to bigotry, not fear, but then use the term regressive to describe people who are trying to move our culture forward, aka progress. Don't you find it odd how on one hand these guys can be extremely pedantic and technical with definitions, then on the other hand so loose with language? It really makes me think they may be insincere. Thoughts? I think some of them might be insincere, some of them might be resorting to that kind of equivocation that you reference intentionally, but in the case of most of them, I think they're probably just biased, and they're just blinded to their bias, and they slant things in their favor and in favor of their viewpoint. And I think the reason why they attack people who they label as being on the regressive left, which for the most part I think is just a bullshit concept, is that they feel threatened. They feel threatened by these folks and these movements that I, for the most part, in fact, almost entirely, consider to be progressive. And you mentioned that they use the term regressive to refer to progressives, and from my perspective, that's what they're doing, and I guess from your perspective, that's what they're doing. But from their perspective, they don't consider it progress. They consider it regressive, and I think that's very telling. And it's very suggestive of what their priorities are and what their real concerns are. Because if you think that it's regressive to speak out against the mischaracterization and the oversimplification and the essentialization and the demonization and vilification of Muslims, if you think that's regressive and you think that you can't, that's creating a box so tight that you won't be able to legitimately criticize Islam or the excesses of radical Islamic regimes or cultures within that box, and that's your problem. These people who throw around the term regressive left or piss and moan about political correctness or SJWs, I wonder, what is it that they really want to say? That they feel silenced, that they feel like there's some pressure on them from these awful regressive leftist bullies that they can't speak freely. Because there are plenty of people, including some who have been labeled as regressive leftists, who are doing a crackerjack job of the things that the people calling them regressive leftists say they would like to do, or that they are trying to do. If only the political correctness, if only the regressive leftists would just ease up and let them speak and give them their freedom. I wonder what it is they really want to say, and why they feel so put upon and so silenced and so bound by the supposed strictures of political correctness and regressive leftism. What is it they really want to say? Patrick Dodds, Steve, I recently saw Michael Moore's Where to Invade Next. Have you seen it, by the way? Now, keeping in mind MM's own biases, he posits that kindness and inclusiveness were more cost-effective, and America should give the presented ideas a try. And it gets me wondering why our country has gotten so harsh and downright cruel in some ways. Assuming you agree, why do you think this country has gotten so unkind in so many of our institutions and overall culture? Also, why are we so obstinate to any kind of change addressing that unkindness, even if it's proven to have practical benefits? Well, first of all, I haven't seen Where to Invade Next yet, but I am familiar with the general premise of it, I think. And I agree with you, and I agree with Michael Moore's premise, as you describe it in your question, that we have become too unkind of a nation, that we could stand to be kinder, to be more compassionate, to be more understanding of each other, particularly of the underprivileged, the marginalized in our country. Why is it like that? I mean, what we really could benefit from in the United States is not so much compassionate conservatism, although of course our conservatism could certainly stand to be more compassionate, but compassionate capitalism. I think the profit motive, and I think the desire to reduce everything to dollars and cents and to economic motivations, and our acceptance of that, our feeling that that is a legitimate way to go about things. I think that has been really damaging. I think we need compassionate capitalism, where, yes, of course, we want the economy to do well. We want people to be able to open businesses. We want people to be able to have jobs and to make money for themselves. But we also need to have an environment where the capitalist goal, the capitalist drive, does not override everything else in our lives. And in too many cases, I think that's the case. In too many cases, we see government programs being cut, government programs that are needed and that are really helping people, that are cut because they're deemed too expensive. The dollars and cents take precedent. We see people fighting against employees being paid living wages. Not extravagant, exorbitant amounts of money, but a living wage. We have people coming out strongly against that because they care more about money than they care about the quality of life of their fellow people. So I think that's a big part of it. I think capitalism is fine. Capitalism is great. But capitalism to the exclusion of everything else is horrifying. And unfortunately, I think we have leaned way too far in that direction over the last 30 or 40 years, and that's something that we really need to correct. Mythos. Steve, do you hold any political opinions that are super controversial? I personally believe that secondary/high school should be opt-in and not opt-out. I'd get into why if I wasn't in a rush to type this, which even my ultra-leftist friends give me black over. Do you hold any views that always incite disagreement when mentioned, even among those of similar opinions to you? I have political opinions that I think are maybe outliers that aren't held by a huge majority of people. Like, I think I'm totally in favor of universal basic income, which a lot of other people are as well, but most people have never even heard of that, and it's just not something that's even on the radar in American politics right now. But I'm hugely in favor of that. And it's funny, you mentioned you think high school should be opt-in rather than opt-out. I kind of have the opposite opinion. I think that high school, I don't think people should be allowed to drop out of high school. It just makes no sense to me that you're required by law to go to school, but you're allowed to stop with 2 years left if you want. That makes no sense to me. I think if the law requires you to attend public school or to attend school to a certain age, you should just make the age 18 or whenever you graduate. You should just require people to graduate from high school. I don't understand why, if we're going to mandate it this far, why not mandate it all the way? But again, I don't think that's a terribly controversial opinion. It's just something that people don't usually talk about. I'm in favor of really radical term limits, and when I say term limits, I mean like one term for everything. People that is probably the closest to like a radical political stance that I have. My draconian term limits, one term for everything, and then you can run for something else if you want. Like if you run for the House of Representatives, you finish your 2-year term and then you're out. But if you want to run for the Senate and get elected there, well, good for you. You can run for the Senate, you can get elected, you can serve 6 years there, and then you're done. If you want to run for president, great, 4 years. You want to run for vice president? 4 years, and then you're done. That's probably the closest I can think of. Malevolent divinity. Steve, I must ask, in order to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't get access to our military, we need young people to get the fuck out and vote. From what I've been told, a reason why older people do so is because they go to church. Methinks we should avoid advocating for people to go to institutions of brainwashing like that. However, that means that the weird religious people may well have too much of an advantage in our political system. So I ask two things. First, how do you think we can get more youngins to get out and vote? And two, could you curse at least 3 times in the process of answering the above? Fuck yeah, I can curse 3 times while I answer your question. How do we get young people to vote? That is a question that if I knew the answer to it, I would probably not be making YouTube videos for a living. I don't know. I wish I did, because the frustrating thing about the way our politics works in the United States now is that when young people go out and vote, when voter turnout among young people is high, liberals, Democrats, progressives tend to win. And when young people stay home and the older folks go out and vote and make up most of the electorate, then conservatives and Republicans tend to win, and things tend to go down the shitter. One, we need more charismatic candidates. Young people need someone that they can relate to, that they feel like speaks to them, that they feel like isn't just someone who's going to go to work and worry about the interests of the previous generation, their parents' generation, or worry about taking care of the wealthy or taking care of the privileged. I think young people are very optimistic, generally speaking, and are very idealistic, and they need a candidate that they at least perceive as reflecting that. I think that's why Obama did so well, because we can get into critiques of Obama and how his presidency has turned out, but the perception of Obama was that he was an idealistic candidate, and he was a change candidate, and he was a candidate that you could believe in and vote for, and it would be consequential, and it would change things that needed to be changed. And to a certain extent, Bernie Sanders has that same vibe this time around, although I don't think he has caught fire nearly as much as Obama did in the previous go-rounds, and I think the results of the primaries to this point have kind of reflected that. But yeah, I think we need candidates that young people can get behind. I think young people also need to have a sense of civic responsibility inculcated in them. I think they need to be taught from a very young age that this community, this country, belongs to them, and that it's something that they can benefit from, and it is also something that they have a great responsibility toward, to make it better for themselves and for others, not only for others that they see around them right now, but for people who haven't even been born yet. You've probably noticed that I've chosen to answer your question in the form of bullshit generalities instead of any specific proposals that I think could actually trigger a more active youth participation in the voting process. And that's because, as I mentioned earlier, I have no idea how to actually do it. And I think I cursed 2 times, so ass. Christopher Costello, do you think men have a right to call themselves feminists? I think men have every right to call ourselves feminists, but I think the final judgment on whether or not we are good feminists, or whether or not the label feminist actually means anything when applied to us, is up to women. Feminism is a movement centered on women. And I think as men, it is very important for us, it is vital for us to be supporters of it, to be allies of it, to do whatever we can to fight back against gender inequality and sexism and misogyny when we find it, to do whatever we can, use whatever privilege we have to help to create a greater space and empower and amplify women. I think that's all very important. And I think at its best, that's what a male feminist should do. I often fall short of that, but that is something that I aspire to do. And if you are a man and you call yourself a feminist, but then you go off and you say and do things that the feminists in your life, the woman feminists in your life, tell you are wrong or objectionable or whatever, you need to listen to them. You need to take that in, and you need to recognize that if you want to really help an oppressed, underprivileged group, then you need to be listening to the people in that group so that you know what they're trying to do, you know what their problems are, you know what they need, and you know what they need from you. And this is something that I have personally gone back and forth with. I identify as a feminist, but I'm cautious about asserting that identity too aggressively because I am a man, and because I am not a member of the group on which feminism is centered. I want to be a good ally, but part of being a good ally is being careful to not make it about you, to make it about the people who are the focus of the activism. And for that reason, I often say that I would like to be a feminist. I would like to be thought of as a feminist. If you were to ask me point blank, are you a feminist? I would want to say yes. But I think the best answer would be for me to say, I hope so. And it is for the women who know me, the women in my life, the feminists in my life, to make that determination. Joseph Fopiano, hey Steve, interestingly enough, Stanley Kubrick is also my absolute favorite director, and I'm delighted we have that in common. In contrast, Wes Anderson is my least favorite director, even though his signature cinematographic style pays homage to Kubrick's, and I don't find Kubrick's films excruciatingly terrible. In Full Metal Jacket, for example, the symmetrical mise-en-scène emphasizes the homogeneity of the cadet's surroundings, as well as the gradual degradation of individuality. But in Moonrise Kingdom, Anderson just does it to up the ante on his whimsical tone. Kubrick actually has something to say, but Anderson sidesteps substance in favor of style. My one exception is the Grand Budapest Hotel, which I thought was fine. How do you feel about Wes Anderson, at least insofar as it pertains to his use of Kubrick's techniques? Would you agree with any of the points I've made? I've been curious to hear your opinion on his work for a long time. Well, I certainly wouldn't say that Wes Anderson is one of my least favorite filmmakers, but I definitely see what you're saying when you say that he uses a lot of the same techniques that Kubrick used. He borrows a lot of sort of Kubrickian aesthetic, but he doesn't use it to really say anything. I think that's a pretty good point. You're right. Wes Anderson does tend to focus more on the whimsy than on any kind of deeper theme or content. And I think you could sort of think of his movies as painstakingly crafted, incredible contraptions, you know, like a Rube Goldberg machine, or like an exquisitely crafted clock with thousands of tiny little gears that all turn in perfect harmony. And when you watch it work, you're like, oh, that's amazing, you know? But it doesn't really tell you anything. It doesn't really reveal any truth to you. There's not really a lot of artistic content there. And that's not always true. I mean, I have really enjoyed a lot of Wes Anderson's movies. I'm not anti-Wes Anderson at all. But yeah, if I have to choose between the two of them, obviously I'm going with Kubrick. And the main reason I go with Kubrick is, and I think it's the same reason for you, because you get the sense that Kubrick is saying something. Kubrick's movies are about something other than what is literally happening on the screen, whereas Wes Anderson seems way more interested in, you know, winding up his incredible contraption and letting it play for our amusement and our enjoyment. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's perfectly fine, and I think Wes Anderson is really good at it. But yeah, I definitely prefer Kubrick, and I think it's a really savvy point that you make. That they both use, I mean, they both employ a lot of detachment. They both have a very detached sort of objective camera that they use. They both favor scene constructions that start out almost as tableaus, where you see like the wide shot of the scene and it's a very quiet, still scene, and then you sort of move in. That they both use very similar techniques, but with Kubrick, you get the sense that he's using it to explore a theme more often, and with Wes Anderson, you get the sense that it's just an obsessively crafted, perfect little scene that he has made that doesn't really have a lot going on under the surface. So for that reason, I prefer Kubrick. Phil Savage, Steve, why do you think people rage watch videos? When a YouTuber I watch starts putting out content that I have an issue with, I either stop watching that channel or just watch the videos of theirs that I know won't be hateful or pointless internet navel-gazing. New term, ping! Though I'm not afraid to hear different perspectives, I think that life is too short to torture myself with media in which I find no value, and I've been wondering what motivates people to do otherwise. Are they lonely? Do they like feeling indignant? More generously, do they watch them for the reasons that people watch bad movies? What's going on? I don't know, Phil. I don't understand this concept either. I am not a rage watcher. I'm like you. When a YouTuber that I have maybe watched in the past starts making videos that I don't like, I just stop watching. If I see no point in spending time in my life watching stuff that I know is only going to make me angry or frustrate me or whatever. I just don't watch. I don't hate watch. I don't leave angry comments. I don't make video responses or make childish little challenges to the person. I just get on with my fucking life and find something else to do. And I don't understand the mentality of people who do that. I just don't get it. Exposing yourself to differing opinions is great and is very important. Exposing yourself to contrary arguments is very important. But there's a difference between making sure that you expose yourself to disagreeing opinions and making sure that you don't shut yourself off from people who have another way of thinking or another view of things. There's a big difference between that and watching YouTube videos made by someone that you think is an idiot. I don't get that. if you think someone on YouTube is a complete dipshit who has his head up his ass and is wrong about everything, what the fuck are you doing watching the videos? So, I'm sorry, Phil, I wish I had a better answer for you, but I am just as much at a loss as you are. Speaking of being at a loss, as usual, I am completely at a loss as to how to get from this segment to the next one, so I am just gonna say that it's now time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Lucas Hackett, One Angry Brony, Yo Steve, Scrooge McDuck or Darkwing Duck? Which one out of the two would pair better with Launchpad McQuack as a dynamic duo? P.S. The DuckTales theme song is so addicting, don't you think? Yeah, I remember DuckTales. It was one of the few Disney-related properties that I did watch when I was a kid. It does have a somewhat addictive theme song, you're right. Who was a better partner for Launchpad McQuack? I mean, I guess you'd have to go with Darkwing Duck, right? Because I remember Launchpad just being sort of an occasional character on DuckTales, but he was the regular sidekick on Darkwing Duck, so you'd probably have to go with that one, I guess. But it's been a while since I watched either show, to be honest. Jack Coyer, hey Steve, this Monday, 29th February, so the Monday just gone when you read this probably, is my birthday, technically my 5th birthday, hooray. I shall be spending it watching some of my favorite films and generally ignoring the rest of humanity for the most part before probably going out with some friends to celebrate in the evening. How do you choose to bathe in your own greatness for your mother's accomplishment? Also, can you give me a happy birthday that will have to last me 4 years until I get my proper birthday? Well, sure, Jack. Happy birthday, somewhat belatedly. Happy leap day, somewhat belatedly. And yeah, for my birthday, if it's up to me, I don't do anything. I don't treat it as any kind of a different day. I don't have a party. I don't go out. I don't do anything special. I don't make a big deal about it at all. That's just me. Shadowman4710, Steve, how much will you pay me to sit through all 6 Middle-earth films for you? Because I'm planning on doing just that with the extended versions. Well, if you're going to do it already, I'm not going to pay you anything, man. You just talked yourself out of a sale. I mean, if you're implying that I could pay you to do it, so then I wouldn't have to do it, that assumes that I have to do it, which I don't, and I'm not gonna. So, ding, sorry. Enjoy watching them for free, though. Just saying, have you ever had a 6-pack? It's been a while. I don't keep beer in the house regularly anymore. The Skeptic Lady, what's your favorite Mel Brooks movie? The Producers. The original Producers, which I believe was Mel Brooks' first movie as a director, I think. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, I love the Producers. Zero Mostel and Gene Wilder. Perfection. Ahoy, Yerno, you generally give people who write apologetics books the benefit of the doubt when it comes to their beliefs, but which one do you suspect most of being a fraud who doesn't believe his own shit? Why? Also, you didn't actually answer my previous question. How many caps have you worked out thus far? A ballpark estimate suffices. I guess how many caps have I had so far? Suns caps, probably 4 or 5 in my life. Altogether, baseball caps, I don't know, probably a dozen or more. It's hard to keep track. I haven't kept count. Which apologist do I most suspect of being a fraud? I think they're all sincere, honestly. If I had to say which one was the closest to being a fraud, maybe Ray Comfort. But I think Ray is sincere. I don't think Ray is a fraud. But if I had to pick one of the ones I've read, do I think, which one is the most likely to be just completely full of shit? Ray. Cyan Moon 1. Hi, Steve. I seem to remember hearing you say that you've never gone through a phase of serious religious belief. I'm wondering what generated your interest in counter-apologetics. Also, you may not feel famous, but 2 kids in Ireland know who you are. Steve Shives. He has a beard and wears a hat and talks about atheism. I had no idea they were paying that much attention. Well, hi, kids. If you're paying attention to this, good to know you're out there and that you remember my beard and hat and atheism. Those are 3 very important things about me. Counter-apologetics, it came from one many years ago, before I was even an atheist, when someone who I was close to gave me an apologetics book and asked me to read it so that we could talk about it later. And also, as I had mentioned in a previous question, I do think it's important to expose yourself to contrary points of view. I do think it's important to know the arguments against your position. And reading apologetics is a part of that. And also, I think it's important for people to have some sense of how to respond. So when I do counter-apologetics, I'm not trying to pwn the apologist. Most of it is to give any other atheists who might be watching the video and watch me go through it and see how I respond to it, to give them some ideas, to give them a starting point in how to formulate their own thinking, so that if someone hands them one of those books or someone comes up to them and starts asking them these questions, they'll have some idea of how they want to respond to it. There you go. Matt Helmers, hey Steve, do you think that older science fiction that features currently standard or even obsolete technology should still be considered science fiction? Shouldn't it just be considered fiction? Great point. I've never thought about that before. I guess, yeah, if like a science fiction story in the 50s that deals with technology that is now non-existent or anachronistic, at least, you wouldn't call it science fiction, you just call it fiction. That's a great point. I never thought about that. Wow, Matthew Patton, hey Steve, what's your favorite moment from the original Star Trek? Mine is Spock's reaction to Kirk's survival at the end of Amok Time. Oh, that's a great one. That might be my favorite one too. But if I'm going to pick another one, the brief moment of joy at the end of City on the Edge of Forever when Kirk and Spock and McCoy are reunited in New York right before the car runs over Edith. There's like that moment of just elation and happiness that the friends have been reunited before the tragedy. I love that. And then I also am a huge fan of the big scenery-chewing moment that William Wyndham gets as Commodore Decker in the Doomsday Machine, where he says he beamed his crew down to the planet. And of course the planet was eaten by the Doomsday Machine. And Kirk says, Matt, there is no planet. And Decker goes, don't you think I know that? There used to be, but not anymore. I love that. I actually do that around the house all the time. Wouldn't it be great to live with me? Hey, that's it, everybody. That's it for the questions. It's time now for the shout-out of the week. And the shout-out of the week goes this time around to the channel called The Bible and Other Fairy Tales. This is the YouTube channel of Linda Beatty, just a terrific comedian and songwriter. She makes these short little videos of humorous commentary on religion-related or atheism-related topics, and occasionally she'll also sing you a song. Really clever, wonderful little songs that she writes, and it's just a really entertaining channel. She puts out new content all the time. I'm baffled that this hasn't found a larger audience yet, but that's why I try to give smaller channels these shout-outs. Hopefully you guys will check out Linda Beatty's channel, The Bible and Other Fairy Tales, and it'll be your cup of tea as well, and you can subscribe to her and start showing her a little bit more support, because I think her content is really good and it deserves a larger audience than it has. So check out The Bible and Other Fairy Tales starring Linda Beatty. Really, really terrific. I also want to remind you, as always, to check out the Lemme Listen podcast. These are podcasts created by the great Jason Harding, Jason with a D, the puppet master of Opinionville. He produces 3 absolutely outstanding podcasts: Lemme Finish, which is co-hosted by Finite Atticus; American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, an improv comedy podcast dealing with cryptozoology that I call a cross between Coast to Coast AM and Twin Peaks; and nearest and dearest to my heart, a podcast called Late Seating, where Jason and I review classic films and make fun of them and summarize them and decide whether or not we think that the movie deserves the reputation that it has, whether it's got a reputation as a great movie or a terrible movie. And our next review, which is going live today, that you can listen to probably right after you watch this video, is a review of possibly the quintessential 80s movie. We're talking about like mainstream pop culture 80s. We are reviewing John Hughes' The Breakfast Club. It's a classic movie, a movie that is well beloved by many people, and we're going to rip it to pieces for your entertainment and then tell you whether or not we actually like it or not. It's a really, really, really good show. I wish that you would check it out, and check out all of the Lemme Listen podcasts at LemmeListenPodcast.com. You won't be sorry. That's my guarantee to you. That's it, everybody. I'm out of here for another week. Thank you all for watching. Please leave a comment asking me a question for next time, because in order for me to do this, you have to ask. So ask me your question, anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, take care, everybody. Hey folks, hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please like it and share it and subscribe to this channel if you're not subbed already. And also please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.